everybody, and welcome to my first Inktober video. This is my first year participating in Inktober and I'm super excited. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to showcase my favorite prompt every Friday. So today I am actually going to be going a day ahead. I'm going to do Saturday's prompt. I've already finished the one for today, so tomorrow I'm just going to draw ahead. I have been planning ahead my sketches and drawing them out ahead of time, just in case there's a day where I don't really have time to draw. Then maybe I'll just have something already drawn and I can just ink it and color it and call it good. So that's my plan. Also, so as not to overwhelm myself, I am using a Canson mixed media sketchbook, and I am taking the pages and dividing them in 4, so I actually end up with little cards that are 5 by 3.5 inches. And I wanted to do that just so it's a little bit smaller, it's easier to finish in a day. I never know what my days are going to be like, and I really want to attempt to finish this challenge, so I'm going to try to make it as easy on myself as possible. The last challenge that I tried to do was a 30-day challenge, and I got pretty far into it, but, well, actually not really that far. I got 7 days into it, so I'm hoping that I can actually complete this Inktober. I'm more using it to work on my drawing, because I really haven't drawn much, really at all, so I kind of want to get better at it. So I am actually going to be using a reference picture for this prompt, which is Shy, by the way, which is Saturday's prompt, but like I said, I'm going to do it early. For now I'm just using Sharpies, but I am hoping to be able to pick up some ink tomorrow and play around with that, because I love working with new mediums and I'd love to, try doing sketches and stuff with actual ink. Another thing I'm using Inktober for is to practice with my Darren ink tenses. I got these last month or the month before, I can't remember, but they're fairly new to me, so I've been practicing with them as well. And I figured what better way to color pictures from Inktober than to use Inktense pencils. So they're super fun to play around with and I'm just absolutely loving it. So you already know what paper I'm using. The materials I'm going to be using is just a mechanical pencil. This is from the brand The Office and it's 0.7. I'm also just going to be using this dust-free dollar store eraser. These are actually my favorite because the little pieces that come off when you're erasing actually kind of bunch up, so it's not just a bunch of tiny little pieces. I'm also going to be using a Uni Posca pen that is 0.7 millimeters for highlights and details. And then for the inking, I'm going to be using a Sharpie that has 2 tips. It's got a bullet nib and then a fine point tip as well. So I picked these up the other day. I thought it was pretty versatile and would work really good for doing different lines since I don't really have much for ink right now. I'm also going to be using a Wink of Stella brush, multiple just water brushes, and of course my Inktense pencils, which are right here. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this was the reference image that I used, and she actually didn't turn out much like this at all. I changed up her stance, and the only part that I really kept was the exclamation point above her head. I absolutely love that, but I more wanted this reference picture for the hair and just kind of seeing how the hair strands kind of fall, because that's one thing that I really struggle with. I feel like the hair that I draw just really doesn't really look like hair. I'm just never too pleased with it. So I'm just starting off the rough figure, and surprisingly I actually didn't have to do as much erasing as I originally thought I would. Usually I'm very unhappy with any characters that I sketch because I really don't draw people much, even in cartoon form, just because I kind of suck at it. So I was pretty happy to kind of come up with her from the picture in my head and have it actually turn out pretty good. Lips definitely is another thing I struggle with. It took me a couple times to get it to where I was happy with it, and then in the end I feel like I kind of ruined them anyways, so that kind of sucked. I'm just going over and redefining some lines. A lot of people will draw a rough sketch and then call it good, but me, I kind of like to have my sketch perfect before I go over an ink, because then I know that I'm going to be happy with it. So I actually decided to go in with a Bic market, which I actually tried out between a few other different kind of pens just to see if they bled or not. So I used the Bic market because it was not water soluble at all, and it was a little bit thinner than this fine point Sharpie that I'm using. And the reason I did that is because this paper actually kind of makes the ink bleed from the Sharpie, so I didn't want to use this on her lips and have them kind of bleed and fill in since the lips were so thin, which, looking at it now, probably wouldn't have mattered because, like I said, I kind of messed up. I mean, they still look okay at the end, but they don't look how they do now. That's exactly how I wanted. She looked a little bit kind of pouty, and she still does, but she just doesn't have that open mouth look to her. So I'm just going in and redefining lines, just changing things up here and there as I thought needed. And I was actually really happy with this from the beginning. Even the hair, I can't complain too much about the hair. I definitely need more practice and could work on it, and I need to start drawing different hairstyles. But for the most part, since it's been a really long time since I drew any kind of character, you know, aside from the other Inktober characters that I've done so far, I'm actually pretty happy with her. So I'm just folding up a spare piece of paper to use behind because I felt like there needed to be a little bit of a background to this. So I decided to kind of create a frame of like a kind of ink splatter or ink blob type frame, and I actually think it was pretty suiting considering it is Inktober, so I've been trying to incorporate some kind of ink looking things in some pictures if I need a filler, and it just works awesomely. I absolutely loved how this turned out. So after creating the initial ink blob pattern, I just go in and add some random lines and some random dots to kind of make it look more like splatter. And considering that I have a little bit of OCD and I'm too much of a perfectionist, I find this really, really challenging to kind of create this messy, kind of realistic type ink splattered look. And even then, to me, it doesn't really look completely genuine. You can definitely tell that it's a drawed in ink splatter, but I feel like the more that I do this, the better I am getting. This is probably my most convincing ink splatter I've done so far during Inktober, in my opinion. After I add in those little squiggly lines to kind of make the ink look less perfect, I go back in with my Posca pen to create some highlights and lighting on the ink to kind of make it stand out a little bit more. And I know I put the date as tomorrow, even though I technically colored this on Thursday. I couldn't put the date as today, because technically this was tomorrow's Inktober, so don't judge me on that. It was my OCD. So these are the colors I'm using. I'm starting off with the dark purple and putting in all the shadows. And then I switch to the dusky purple and fade it into the dark purple and bring it up towards the highlights. And then I switch to fuchsia to color in the highlights. So usually I will completely color in a picture with the pencil before I go in and activate the ink, but for this one I wasn't too sure about the book color, so I kind of wanted to see how her hair color would look before I decided on that. And also I learned my lesson on not letting certain parts dry. Like, I wouldn't color the hair and then go in and color the shirt right away, because the ink will actually bleed if you put more water next to it. So yeah, I've learned my lesson on that one. I can't remember which Inktober day I learned that on, but I'm being a little bit more careful with my coloring and making sure that I let things dry before I continue. So I decided that a blue book would look awesome with her hair. Of course, I kept the shirt kind of a whitish gray color because I didn't really want it to pop out too much. I wanted her hair and the book to be the most eye-catching features. And I was going to leave the background white as well, but I actually decided that it needed a little something more. Here I'm using the dusky purple for her lips. So I decided that it needed something more, so I decided to kind of go around her with green aquamarine, kind of to create this greenish halo. I figured that would make her hair kind of pop out a little bit more, and it actually worked to my advantage because another thing that I've been trying to do with each of my October drawings for this year is to use Wink of Stella on every one and create some kind of shimmering aspect to it. So for this one I decided to make the background just where it was green shimmer, as well as I do eventually kind of draw on a white wristband for her, and I don't show it in the video, but I went back in later on and I made her glasses shimmer as well, just to kind of make it look a little bit reflective. So after that, I'm going in on her skin, and I took the ink off the pencil because I definitely didn't want to get to too much ink, because skin is really delicate, and I'm actually really loving doing skin with the Inktense pencils. It just looks pretty awesome in my opinion. It is a little bit hard to get the shading right on it, but I just love the overall effect and how smooth that it looks. So now I'm going back in with the saddle brown to create some shadows. And once I'm happy with that, I go in with the scarlet pink to give her just a little bit of blush. So here I drew in teeth and then decided that I didn't like it, so I just colored the inside of her mouth black. And I really wish I would have just left her lips as is, but here I go in and I add some highlights to her hair and her glasses and her lips, which just turned out awful. I did not like it. I should not have used the Posca pen for that. It was a little bit too thick. So then I had to go in and make her lips even darker, and I just decided to leave it like that. So now it looks like she has closed lips, and I still like her. I don't mind the lips. She still looks pouty, but I did prefer to have it look like she had just a little bit of an open mouth. So there was the Wink of Stella added. Here I go back in with a Posca pen just to give her some really thin highlights on her lips. And I also make that bracelet highlighted. Here you can see the glitter in the light. I wish I had sunlight because it really makes it sparkle. But that was pretty much it. That's how she turned out. I was super happy, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for my next one on Friday. I will see you guys then.